as well as regular normal people, I have my students here who are undertaking their masters in computing and are doing problem solving as module. So can I have a quick give it up for everybody who's doing a masters, please? I'm going to strip off. Can everybody see from here? How about you? Okay. I might just sit here for a minute. I'll start with the following. Ladies and gentlemen, I say to you this evening, I am a nerd. I am a nerd. And you might ask yourself, how does he know he's a nerd? Well, I know I'm a nerd because when I look at the periodic table of elements, I think that is more beautiful than any stained glass window you've ever seen in your life. The harmony of it, the beauty of it, the symmetry, the synchronicity of it. I know because of the periodic table of elements that I'm a nerd. How else do I know I'm a nerd? Apart from the periodic table of elements, anything in science. I love science. I think science is really interesting. It could be pi, it could be Nikola Tesla, it could be the speed of light. Any of these things I really want to talk about. I know I'm a nerd because I love television. And I like nerdy television. This is the kind of television I like. Science fiction television. Or smart television at least. And I definitely know I'm a nerd. Because I love to read. I've never met a book that I didn't love to read yet. But I have to admit there are certain books that I really love and certain authors that I'll always go back to. And these are definitely the authors I love. And the final reason I know I'm a nerd is because I like nerdy jokes. So I like this kind of joke. That's how I know I'm a nerd. I'm definitely a nerd. Okay, so on with the show. This talk is going to look at how hackers are portrayed in the movies, just to see if it's different from real life or not. So we'll start with the trailer. Okay, here we go. So, I want to tell you a story before we start. A story about when I was much younger. A long, long time ago, well maybe not that long ago. When I was much younger and much thinner, yes I know, yes I was much thinner back then when I was younger. I worked for an unnamed company. I won't say who it was. There was me and several people at my level as a developer. There was my boss, who was like a wolf man or something like that. His boss was like the invisible man, and the owner of the company, he was like Big Brother or something like that. There was a lot of other employees and staff as well. But during one of the booms, and I'm not sure which one, my boss and his boss both left the company. And through sheer luck bad, I got promoted to being my boss's boss. So I was a senior software developer, having started for the company 2 months ago as a junior developer. This was interesting. The first thing I had to do was write the computer security policies for 14 companies who were all our clients. This left me in a state of complete bewilderment. I was completely confused. What I did was though, like a good student when I was a student, I looked at what a computer security policy was and saw that it was threats and assessing threats and all kinds of things like that. So I tried to find out how do you assess computer threats. Well, lots of books say the way you assess a computer threat is through a combination of experience and imagination. But if you're only 2 months working in a company, you ain't got no experience. So all you have is your imagination. So as a young man, the only thing I really knew about computer security was movies. This is the only thing I knew. I had seen Tron, I had seen Sneakers, I saw Jumping Jack Flash. So because of that, I wrote certain things into the computer security policy that shouldn't be there. So there can be some of these companies, and I've looked at their policies, still say you may be scanned into the game grid and may have to fight with laser discs. Robert Redford and some other guys might try and hack into your company. Angelina Jolie may try and attack you, things like that. So it still says it in the computer security policy. So I just thought, this is interesting to see whether or not movies are accurately portraying hackers. So this is the science bit, which is my favorite bit. I took a data collection process. So I went onto a bunch of websites and looked at a bunch of books about hacker movies and got a list of about 200 hacker movies to see how many there were. Based on that, I used a technique called Hermeneutic Phenomenology to determine which of these are legitimate hacker movies and which aren't. Hands up here who's heard of Hermeneutic Phenomenology. Okay, great. So it's like a science version of eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That's basically what it is. It's that dressed up as science. So from that analysis, I came up with 6 principles as to decide whether a movie is or isn't a hacker movie. We won't go into them. They're the 6 principles. And from those 6 principles, I got it down to 50 hacker movies. So these are the 50 hacker movies that I think best represents hacking and are the most dangerous if managers look at them because they might think this is real life. So we'll go through them a little bit. When do you think the first hacker movie was? John, out the decade. 50s, 30s?
90s.
90s, yeah, I like it.
70s.
70s, good. Anybody? 50s, good. 60s. So the 50s is a reasonable guess, I think, because in the 50s, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn started a movie called Desk Set. Katharine Hepburn works for a company that they do research, and Spencer Tracy comes in, he's an operations manager, and he installs a machine that is going to replace Katharine Hepburn's whole department. She talks about trying to stop it working, but instead of hacking, she says, we'll burn the computer down. That's not really hacking, I think. It's kind of like hacking, but not really. If we go on to the 60s, Peter Ustinov started a movie called Hot Millions with Carl Malden, who was in the streets of San Francisco, Bob Newhart, and Dame Maggie Smith. So I want to show you just a few seconds, 30 seconds of that movie. So I'm going to go over to my machine to do that. Alright. Where's the black one? There. One more time. Alright.
This is Caesar. Caesar Smith. He's imaginative, analytical, logical, capable of concentration, and meticulous care. Caesar Smith is a computer man. He's also the most successful embezzler in the modern business world.
As long as that blue light is on, the computer is
Against what? Embezzlers.
Okay, that's enough of that. That's probably the funniest line I've ever heard in a movie. As long as the blue light is on, the computer is safe. What happens in the movie is Peter Ustinov unscrews the blue light, embezzles a load of money, and then screws it back in again. That's the skillful hacking that goes on there. He does a lot of shoulder surfing techniques as well, so he does ask people, because he's pretending to be a computer expert, so he says to them, here's a pop quiz, how would I create new checks for a company? So he does do a little bit of social engineering as well. The other movie that I think from the 60s is probably a good example of hacking is The Italian Job. So in The Italian Job, Michael Caine hires Benny Hill, the notorious British comedian, who's better known for chasing women around, to hack the Italian traffic light system. By successfully doing that, they're able to drive millions around the up and down tunnels and things like that. But Benny Hill probably plays the second ever computer hacker in the movies, which is a bit depressing. The 70s is an interesting decade because in the 70s, the American censors stopped censoring sex and violence. So if you think about movies from the 70s, it's always Gene Hackman and a bunch of nude women and a bunch of punch-ups, right? If you've ever seen any movies from the American movies from the 70s, they're all like that. The reason they're like that is because the censor stopped preventing those kinds of movies happening. So compared to sex and violence, somebody sitting at a computer is kind of boring. So we don't see many hacking movies of the 70s. There's a movie that Gene Hackman is actually in called The Conversation, which I think is very much like a hacking movie, except there's no computers in it. He's a surveillance expert who does audio recordings and things like that, and he accidentally hears a conversation about a potential assassination, and then he gets hunted by the government, and it has the same kind of sweaty paranoia as you'd expect to see in a hacking movie. So that's like a hacking movie, but not quite. So I couldn't really find a good example of a hacking movie from the 70s other than Star Wars. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that R2-D2 hacks the Death Star, okay? So R2-D2 hacks in, finds out where Princess Leia has been kept prisoner, he stops the garbage disposal unit crushing everybody. So R2-D2 is the only hacker really from the 70s. Moving on to the 80s. The 80s in a sense were the real birth of hacker movies. So we had some great hacker movies in the 80s. War Games, of course, was a really big deal. Ferris Bueller's Day Off as well. Matthew Broderick does hack his number of absences in school computer in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So all kinds of excellent hacking movies in the 80s. Superman 3 I think is great. The Superman 3 with Richard Pryor does two things. One, Richard Pryor doesn't know anything about computers but does a course on it. He's an expert with the yo-yo, so he knows about strings and loops. So then when he learns about computing, he knows how to do strings and loops already, which I think is pretty funny. The other thing about Superman 3 is it explains a salami slicing attack. So what Richard Pryor does in the movie is he takes the fractions of percentages, the fractions of cents. When you earn interest, you might earn 50 cents plus a small percentage. So he takes that small bit fraction of a cent and puts it into a bank account and makes millions every month by just taking the tiny fractions of pennies that people usually write off in large companies. War Games, though, definitely is the big one. I think War Games, the idea of a teenager sitting in their bedroom hacking has to be from War Games. So that is the archetypal hacker movie in some ways. Die Hard as well, of course. Theo does hack the building systems to take control of them, and he is their hacker in that movie. Moving on to the 90s, there was really a good number of movies. So by now, hacker movies have achieved their maturity. We have, in 1995, the movie Hackers. So Angelina Jolie and others hacked the internet, and never in a computer movie has there been a more realistic depiction of cyberspace than in the movie Hackers. That's exactly what it looks like for me. Not so much. Independence Day, of course, has Jeff Goldblum hacking into the alien spaceship. So he uses his Mac PowerBook to hack in there and implant a virus. Steve Jobs would love if Macs were that compatible, but I don't think they're really that compatible in real life. Scott Bakula, who, this is after Quantum Leap for Star Trek Enterprise, he was in a movie called Tom Clancy's Net Force, where he was set in the future, 2001. In the future, in 2001, apparently there'll be a federal agency in charge of monitoring all hacking. So he fights this evil corporate villain who owns the biggest computer company in the world. They have an operating system that dominates the market, and they've released a browser that they're trying to kill all the other open source browsers. His name is Bill something in it, but they don't really say his name in it. So I'm not sure who he's supposed to be really. God knows who it could be. The Matrix, though, I think the first 20 minutes of The Matrix is a good example of a hacker movie. Before it goes into The Matrix, Keanu Reeves, called Neo, is a regular hacker. So I think The Matrix is an excellent example of a couple of things. It's an excellent example of the cyberpunk look, and certainly it looks like a William Gibson novel. I think at its philosophy, it's a Philip K. Dick novel, but the look of it is very William Gibson. I think The Matrix shows that you don't have to be a great actor to be the lead in a movie. If you go, whoa, and dude, you can actually be the lead of a multi-million-dollar movie. So we look at a little bit of The Matrix. When people ask me what I do as a computer lecturer, this is what I say I do. So we look at a little bit of The Matrix. Top millions. The Matrix. 30 seconds.
Whoa.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. Rated R, now playing at a theater near you.
So that's kind of what it's like to have a computer job, isn't it? Yeah? No? Okay. Alright. The last movie from the 90s, which I think is a great one, is called Pirates of Silicon Valley. It stars Noah Wiley from ER and Anthony Michael Hall from The Dead Zone, really, I guess, the TV series of The Dead Zone. They play Steve Jobs and Bill Gates respectively, and their strange relationship that developed between the two of them. Moving on to the 2000s, which I refuse to call the noughties. In the 2000s, 15 movies really that I think are really good examples of hacker movies. By the 2000s, Hollywood have realized that this is a whole industry, so they know exactly how to package these, and they make them exactly like heist movies. So we start seeing common themes emerge. So we've got like people forced into hacking, like in Swordfish and Foolproof and Firewall. We've got insider threats for the first time. So for the first time we realised that, generally speaking, hacking isn't happening from some teenager sitting in their bedroom outside your company. Hacking is happening when your employees start ripping stuff off from you. So Antitrust, Cypher and Code Hunter are definitely in that league. And I think sequels were big time in the 2000s. So there was a sequel made to The Net that starred Sandra Bullock that was exactly like The Net. It wasn't as much a sequel as a remake. There was a Die Hard 4 which was exactly like Die Hard 1, 2 and 3. And there was a sequel to War Games made that went straight to video hell. That was the exact same movie. Kid accidentally makes to a computer that may cause global nuclear thermal destruction. So the exact same concept again. In terms of comparing movies to real life, in real life, what do you think the average age of a hacker is? 25, under 25 or over 25, how about?
25 to 50.
25 to 50, excellent, very good. Buy that man a beer, somebody. In the movies, in general, the majority of hackers are between 25 and 50. So movies are representing the age of hackers correctly, usually. In real life, most hackers either work in the IT industry or are full-time hackers. In the movies, the majority of characters work in the computer industry or are full-time hackers. So movies represent elements of hacking very correctly. In terms of insider versus outsider threats, we really don't know, because most organizations don't want to report how much insider threats versus outsider threats they have. Certainly in the movies, the majority of them are person attacking from the outside, because that's an exciting heist kind of movie, whereas there's very little insider, but we don't know what that's like in real life. In terms of the mimetic verisimilitude of hacking movies, how accurate are they? How well do they represent life? Some movies do it better than others. So, the movie Hot Millions, for example, is a good representation of how embezzlers work. Apart from the blue light thing, which probably isn't very true. There's a British movie called Bellman and True about a tiger kidnapping. A father whose son is kidnapped and they force him to hack money out of his bank. That is a really accurate depiction of hacking. Sir Bernard Hill, who I guess nobody older than me here who know Boys from the Black stuff. But if you've seen Lord of the Rings, King Theoden, who's old and wrinkly, and then Gandalf sucks the evil out of him, and then he becomes young and says, "Let us go to Helm's Deep and fight." So him, Bernard Hill, he stars in that movie. There's a German movie called 23, not the Jim Carrey movie, the number 23. It's a German movie about a hacker called Karl Koch, who was a real German hacker who kind of got obsessed with the idea that the Freemasons and the Illuminati were trying to take over the world. So he thought that he was getting messages in newspapers to start hacking into the CIA, the FBI, the KGB and everything. He took a lot of drugs, he went very crazy, and he disappeared. Some reports that he's dead and other reports that he's working for the government, various governments around the world, so that's a real interesting interpretation. Pirates of Silicon Valley, as I said, that's a very good depiction of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. And there's a movie called Takedown, it was called Trackdown in America, about the life of Kevin Mitnick. He writes a lot of books about hacking and says he knows a lot about hacking. He takes a lot of credit for what other hackers have done, but he's a real media guy. The types of things that we see in movies that are accurately enough depicted: the salami slicing attack, where you embezzle little small amounts of money so that nobody will notice. Social engineering, where you just say, "Can I borrow your password for a minute? I'll give it back as soon as I'm finished with it." Hacking software, definitely. So lots of movies have this password cracking software that will get you through. Insider attacks a little bit, and yes, other password software that will decrypt software. Stuff that isn't doing in movies that's happening in real life. Denial of service attacks, and we saw that in the CEO website this year. Denial of service is a big thing that happens. Depicting that in a movie would look like packet, 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 packet. That wouldn't look very exciting, but that's a very real hacking thing. Phishing, there's not enough of it in the movies. Did anybody see Star Trek that came out last year, the Star Trek movie? Has anybody got the DVD? So if you look at the deleted scenes in Star Trek, it explains how Captain Kirk reprogrammed the Kobayashi Maru system. He sent an email to his green girlfriend. She opened it and had a virus that reprogrammed the system. That's one of the deleted scenes. Phishing is not exciting, that's why it didn't make it into the movie. Organizational ID is a big thing as well that's happening in real life, not so much in the movies. And sadly, this is big. People using the computer systems at work to bully other people at work. So the harassment of employees is huge. It's going on a lot, and it is hacking in the sense that you're using corporate equipment for illegal purposes. The bullying is illegal. So harassment is massive, and we're seeing it a lot in companies. People's Facebook accounts being vandalized, people's websites being vandalized, all kinds of stuff like that. It's a major downer. Alright. In terms of what this tells us is, the representation of hackers in the movies is correct. It's pretty good, like it's a reasonably accurate depiction. But nonetheless, when we talk about hackers, when we think about them, we think about these teenagers in their bedrooms. So it's not really the non-technical manager's fault that they're stupid. It's our fault that we don't make it clearer to them, I think. Alright, so I'm going to show you a list of the hackers that I considered throughout this work, and if you want to ask me questions about any specific hacker, you can. So here's the list, have a look at them. No? Okay. Alright, perfect. Alright. We'll finish with that, okay. That's it.